Hey everyone, this is Adam Elenbaas from Nightlight Astrology. Happy Monday, everyone. Today we're going to take a look at Mercury's upcoming conjunction with Uranus in the sign of Taurus. And we are going to take a look at this in relation to the fact that Venus is also about to conjoin the Sun and that Mercury is acting as the host for that Venus cazimi, and doing so while it's crossing Uranus and Taurus, reactivating the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction, by the way. So that will be what we explore in today's episode. Before we get into it, as always, don't forget to like and subscribe. You can find transcripts of any of these daily talks on the website, nightlightastrology.com. I want to take you over there right now because, as you know, we're in promotion mode for our upcoming programs. Click on the courses tab. First year course in particular starts on June 16th. We would love to have you come and join us for our next one-year course in ancient Hellenistic astrology. You can learn more about that on the first year course page. And at the bottom, there are enrollment options, including need-based tuition if you're someone who is experiencing some financial strain or you're living within a very fixed budget. We understand. We don't think people should be priced out of studying astrology. And so we have a sliding scale for people who might need a little bit of help. So take advantage of that. If you have any questions about the program after you check it out, email us info@nightlightastrology.com. The other course beginning on June 22nd is our horary program. After today's video, if you stick around, you can hear more about horary astrology, see me do a horary reading, and get introduced to that branch of astrology if you've never heard about it before. We also have tuition assistance for that program. You do need to have a background in traditional aspects and dignities, so a little exposure to traditional astrology to be ready for that class. That is the only one that we allow people to enter without having first taken our other programs in terms of the advanced classes. So that might be interesting to you. Learn more about it after today's episode. There's an informational video tagged on to the end. The other thing I would tell you to check out is if you go to the events page, you can see our live events over the summer, including webinars, and pretty soon we'll have the speaker series information posted so you can attend those. Those talks are free. The webinar series are $20 to join. You get the recording afterward if you can't make it live. I'm talking about the 12th house in June, and in July, I'm looking at Uranus's entrance into Gemini. You can also check out all the videos you've missed if you haven't checked out our Neptune, Uranus or Pluto in Love series, or my first talk on Neptune and Aries. Those are all there in the shop page for sale as well. Okay, so now that we've gotten through that, let us talk a little bit about these Mercury-Uranus significations. And before I even get into that, let me put up the real-time clock and lay out the transit and its timeline for you. So here we are, and you will see that, whoops, I am all over the place. Here we go. Here we are. So what's happening this week as the week progresses, and we have a bunch of things we're getting into this week since it's the last week of the month. We have horoscopes, we have the overview for June. So I'm getting into this early in the week here on Monday, even though it's the actual conjunction will not come through until Thursday into Friday, May 30th and 31st. So you can see here the two planets, Mercury and Uranus, are crossing over. Mercury's crossing over Uranus in a conjunction. And this is happening between Thursday, May 30th this week, and Friday, May 31st. The reason that is so significant is not only because that's a big transit, and that's reactivating the Jupiter-Uranus square, which happened just right around these same degrees on April 20th. So we have kind of one last transit in Taurus that's reactivating that recent conjunction between Jupiter and Uranus. But then it's also serving as the ruler of several planets who have all just ingressed into Gemini, including Jupiter, Venus, the Sun. And most importantly, if you see what's going on there, Venus is getting together in a conjunction with the Sun. So if we advance this just a touch, we'll see that the conjunction between these two planets really gets started on June 2nd, this Sunday at the end of this week, beginning of next. And then early next week, that conjunction moves on as Mercury comes into Gemini and joins the party. So if you kind of look at, there's a story that's being told, and this is what's important to pay attention to. This week, Thursday into Friday, Mercury conjoins Uranus as the ruler of Jupiter, Venus, and the Sun, while Venus is combust and going through the cazimi reset with the Sun, which starts happening by Sunday. Then into Monday, Mercury enters Gemini as the host of the Venus-Sun cazimi. Now, an empowered host that is there to help, coming off from the conjunction to Uranus, about to conjoin with Jupiter, by the way, a benefic. So Mercury is, in other words, supporting the transformation of Venus. And that sort of reiterates the idea that Venus was the recent ruler of the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction. So many planetary events like this are just like um, they're like little echoes and imprints of the recent events of the spring. I mean, we still have Mars in the late degrees of Aries, coming off from Chiron and so forth. So whether we're looking at the solar eclipse that just happened a couple months ago, the Jupiter-Uranus moment in April, a lot of the events that continue on from that space carry the resonance of those events with them. And this is another example. Anyway, let's not make it too complicated. I want to go through some of the Mercury-Uranus significations in Taurus and just link them creatively to the reset that Venus is going through. Number one is that when Mercury and Uranus get together, first of all, in an Earth sign ruled by Venus, with Venus in Gemini, which by the way means that Mercury and Venus are in each other's signs, that's called mutual reception, that can create very fruitful and harmonious connections between the elemental realms of earth and air. Earth being the impressionable world of shapes, forms, sensual, embodied experiences, the domain of Venus, pleasure, sensuality, embodiment, and the values of Taurus include those of peace, stability, ease, flow, support, harmony, and a kind of emphasis on enjoyment. Those earthy values right now have a very seamless, beautiful connection with the realm of Gemini: air, thought, mind, communication, relationships, technology, mental ingenuity and discovery intellectually, or in the realm of ideas and thoughts. So the earth, mind, body connection is really pronounced right now through this conjunction, and changes that can be made where the mind and the body communicate. We're talking about the classic mind-body connection, in other words. We're talking about the sensual and the rational, the physical and the mental. We're talking about a space in which they can mutually inflect upon one another and create change or progress or connections where there haven't been connections. So that's, broadly speaking, one thing to watch for right now. And it can show up in so many different ways. If you want to look specifically at the whole sign houses of Taurus and Gemini, that would be a good place to start. Number two is that this moment, this Mercury-Uranus conjunction coming through later this week, is going to act as a trigger for a Venusian revolution, which would mean a radical shift in the circumstances or appearances of Venus in our life. The death, the ending of something as Venus is combust, and this Mercury-Uranus moment is acting as the trigger for maybe a Venusian death or a revolution of circumstance or some kind of meaningful reordering or reorientation of values, relationships, thoughts, ideas, etc. Now, the reason that we say this is that Mercury-Uranus will serve as breakthrough moments for things that are Venusian, because again, this is Mercury conjoining Uranus in Venus's sign. So the moments, the flashes of insight, the illumination, the sudden breakthrough of ideas and epiphanies and our awareness and something suddenly becoming lucid that was maybe cloudy or we didn't see before, very Mercury-Uranus in general. Now we can see that connected to a change in relationships, a change in values, a reordering of ideas, thoughts, technology with respect to the Gemini aspect, the Gemini domain of our birth charts, for example. So because Venus is combust, resetting right now, we have Mercury ruling that reset with mutual reception to Venus and going through the conjunction to Uranus. This Mercury-Uranus serves as the flashpoint for a Venusian revolution or change. Does that make sense? And that reiterates the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction in Taurus once again. Fantastic. And then finally, is it any time that Mercury and Uranus conjoin, whether it would be in Libra or Taurus, you can think of that sudden illumination or understanding of something Venusian. It's the breakthrough in playing a musical instrument where suddenly you can do something you couldn't before. It is the sudden realization that you want to take voice lessons. You've always wanted to take voice lessons. Now you're going to do it. It's the sudden idea that you have to go and maybe you're going to go to like a med spa and you're going to get some kind of procedure done. I've all of a sudden I've discovered that it's time to do something, I don't know, that constitutes a kind of risk or a Venusian Uranian type of moment. So, with respect to Taurus, that often has to do with something we're going to do to beautify ourselves or change our appearance or our fashion or our wardrobe. It could also have something to do, just broadly speaking, something to do with our values. What do I find attractive, beautiful, valuable? What am I in possession of? What do I want to relinquish? And what, like, I have to give something up, and maybe there's something new that I want to come in possession of. Mercury-Uranus is an incredibly creative, it's associated with invention, originality, authenticity, defiance, and rebellion, and all with respect to Venusian topics right now: love, sex, relationships, art, beauty, women, friends. So you think right now about a kind of light bulb flashpoint moment. It's interesting that Venus is also coming at the heart of this, into the heart of the sun. It's like all things Venusian are being so illuminated right now. And that for some of us is going to make something absolutely clear that something cannot go on and it has to change. And for others, it might mean that a new idea is taking hold, and absolutely we're ready to go in the direction of a new idea that's very attractive to us. A change in relationships has to be made, and there's an event that happens that serves like that lightning strike that changes everything. So it's a big week. It's a big week with respect to the significations of Venus going through this death and rebirth, death and rebirth. Ah! and then oh, okay. And the other thing that you could say, broadly speaking, is that the most obvious thing that will happen is our relationships will change. Anytime that Venus is going through such a significant shift, and at the same time you see something really Uranian happening, it's like, okay, this is the relational revolution moment. And that doesn't mean it has to tear apart a relationship. It doesn't mean that it's going to just be destructive, but it does mean that there's a creative impulse that has to come through. And if things have been holding to set patterns or fixed patterns rigidly, and sometimes they need to get broken open by such a moment. But the whole name of the game right now is sort of creative, fun, open-minded stimulation of change, and kind of an excited moment of originality with respect to all things Venus. That's this week. It's a big week. And again, these events, you might underestimate them because we're not seeing how closely connected these cycles and patterns are to bigger events that happened recently, like the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction. I'm sure you guys are so sick of me saying all of this by now because it's been like the same thing week after week, but we're in it. So I hope to hear from you guys and hear what stories you have to share. Feel free to drop us a story in the comment section using the hashtag grabbed, or email it to us, grabbed@nightlightastrology.com. If you stick around after I sign off, you can learn more about the upcoming horary program. This week, we've got horoscopes with Alex, monthly overview for June, lots more to come. So, and we're going to start trying to help you understand things like Jupiter and Gemini, trining Pluto and Aquarius with respect to the whole sign house placements in your birth chart, the Jupiter-Saturn square with respect to the whole sign. Lots of horoscopes to come with all of these big summer transits that we're going to start talking about. So anyway, that's it for today. Hope you guys are doing well, and we will see you again soon. Bye. Hey everyone, thanks for sticking around. I'm going to tell you guys more about the upcoming horary astrology program, which begins later in June. And I hope that if you have never learned anything about horary, that you will, at least in listening to this, be exposed to horary astrology, have a little bit of an understanding of what it is. And if not now, then maybe sometime in the future, you can take time to study it. It is one of the forms of astrology that dates back to the earliest eras of astrology, the Hellenistic era, the medieval era, the early Indian period of astrology. And it is a branch of astrology that is concerned with specific predictive questions. So, for example, a horary question is usually formed in terms of a yes or no answer, and it is cast from the location of the astrologer at the time that the astrologer receives the question. So a typical horary question might be, will I get the job? Or will we get married? Or my cat went missing, will she come back? There are applications of horary astrology that involve the location of missing items, like where is my missing pen? Or where is, I actually helped a farmer one time locate a missing bull that had gotten out of the pasture. So it's a really, really fascinating form of astrology. It's very old, and it is like the birth chart of a question, a predictive question. So again, if I receive a question from someone and it's like, will I get the job? Then I cast that chart at the time I get the question. I usually use the receipt of the email time. And then I cast a chart for that question. And there are a series of traditional techniques that have been around for a very long time, thousands of years, that are used to determine the answer to that question. So with that in mind, let me show you a chart and you can learn, see what it's like in real time. So this chart is, the question that was asked is, will my spouse keep his job? This is a woman who had some very good reason to worry that her spouse might be getting laid off. And so she wanted to know so she could prepare herself, is he in fact going to be laid off from his job? And so when I receive that question, that's a horary question. When I receive it at 9:03 a.m. on April 10th of 2023, a little over a year ago here in Minnetonka, Minnesota, where I live, I cast a chart that becomes the birth chart of that question. I then use a series of techniques, and that's what you're going to learn in the horary program, are those techniques that go into answering all different kinds of questions. Questions about jobs, questions about money, questions about health, questions about marriage or relationships, questions about babies, questions about in pregnancy. I mean, you name it. And even missing pets and people and missing items. You see a lot of different approaches in horary. And so over the course of a year, we study those approaches to different kinds of questions, and we practice and practice with different charts of different questions, learning the techniques so that we can have this predictive tool in our kit as an astrologer. So anyway, here's a question: will spouse keep his job? In horary, what happens is you are always looking at the planets that represent the people and aspects of the question. The person asking the question is called the querent. The querent is always given the ruler of the ascendant and usually the moon as a co-signifier of the querent. So in this case, Gemini is rising. So we're going to give Mercury to the querent and the moon. Well, we can see the moon is sitting right on the cusp of the 7th house of marriage, which shows us that the querent, the person asking the question, is indeed really concerned about their spouse. The placement of the moon gives that away because it's sitting on the cusp of the 7th, which is going to be the house of the partner. So you see little things like that. They're a little wink that you have you have a radical chart, so to speak. Now, the 7th house ruler is going to be the spouse. That's Jupiter, since Sagittarius sits on the 7th house cusp. In horary, we use quadrant-based houses because the theory was all developed through quadrant-based house systems, which is interesting. So this is the only place in my practice that I teach from and use a quadrant-based house system, not whole sign. Anyway, it's really fascinating to look at this chart because Jupiter is going to represent the spouse. So we can see Jupiter over here, about to be conjoined by the sun. Then we look at the spouse's job. And the spouse's job is going to be the 10th house from the spouse. The 10th house from the 7th is going to be the ruler of the 4th. That's called derived houses. This is something that appears in horary quite a bit. So if we take the spouse as house 1 and we count 1 through 10 from house 7, we get to the cusp of house 4 for the 10th from the 7th, or the spouse's job. That is the sun. So here we see that the sun, exalted sun in Aries, is about to conjoin Jupiter. This means that Jupiter is combust. And when Jupiter is combust like that so badly and the sun is about to conjoin it, that is a moment of death for Jupiter. So the job, we know that combustion from a planet like that is often implied in the charts of death, or that's a condition of debility for Jupiter at the hands of the exalted sun. And Jupiter is, of course, sitting on the 12th house cusp, which is the derived 6th from the 7th house of the spouse, a place that was associated with misfortune. So we can see that this is a very clear indication that that Jupiter is being debilitated by, burnt up by the job. And that moment that's coming of the conjunction could be positively looked at as maybe a death and rebirth of your career. But the first thing that's happening is the death. When it is a possibility built into the question that he could be one of the people that's about to be laid off at his company, and you have this kind of symbolism, this is very clearly a yes, your husband is about to be laid off because of that combustion and the upcoming combustion and conjunction from the sun. Now you might say, what about cazimi? Doesn't the cazimi mean like a rebirth? Yeah, but not first, right? The first thing that happens is that Jupiter is being burnt up by the sun. When the sun is the job and Jupiter is the spouse, and there is a possibility that this kind of event happens, then yes, that is exactly what happens. We can also see if we take out the outer planets, which is something we toggle back and forth in our horary class. We take out the outer planets, and we can also see that the very next thing that is going to happen is the moon, as an indicator of the flow of events, is about to trine the sun and then immediately hit Jupiter, which means that the moon is also translating the light from the sun to Jupiter. And when the sun is acting here as a malefic, burning Jupiter up, this is another sign that the flow of events is going to lead that malefic sun to eliminate Jupiter. The malefic sun only in this context because Jupiter is combust. So anyway, these are little rules of horary, and there's a ton of them, right? For every different kind of question, there are different ways of assigning planets to the parts of a question, and there are different techniques that we use to answer the question. In that case, the judgment of the chart was, it does look as though your husband is going to be laid off, and indeed, that was the outcome. Her husband was laid off within a week. So the way that I framed it in the answer was very uplifting, because I said, this is when we see this kind of event, a Jupiter Sun cazimi, which we've had in the sky recently just now too, as I'm making this, that can be a sign of rebirth. So even if there's a death and a loss here of job, the opportunity for this to be a career reset is also implied by the transition of this Jupiter Sun conjunction. And she did write to me later in the summer last year to tell me that he found a new job. So, and it was indeed a positive reset. So half of the art of horary is delivering the news. How do you deliver a predictive result without increasing someone's anxiety, in a way that's constructive? How do we take what we see and translate it for someone when the question is predictive? And there's often a lot of, people have a lot of emotion invested in the outcome. So this is a beautiful form of astrology. If you are interested in studying it, here is how to register. You go over to the website, which is nightlightastrology.com, and you are going to go to the courses page. And when you're on the courses page, you're going to click on the horary course. You need to have a background in understanding dignities, aspects, and house meanings. And then it starts on June 22nd. At the bottom, you will find that there is need-based tuition assistance. And there are also payment plans that you can utilize, and a one-time payment saves a little bit of money. So, but if you need tuition assistance because it would be impossible for you to take the program otherwise, please be sure to check that out and come study horary. It's an amazing, amazing form of astrology. If I could do nothing but practice horary, I would, because it is so interesting to see the unique picture of each situation come to life in the context of a horary reading. There's no birth chart needed for it either. It's amazing that astrology can work that way. We always think, oh, it has to work off from a birth chart. No. We can use astrology just like we use tarot cards. Cast them out at the moment a unique question comes up. Cast a chart at the moment of a question, and you have a series of techniques and approaches that can help you answer it. So that's horary in a nutshell. I hope to see you guys there, and thanks for listening.